The hall was filled with golden light, and the sound of music floated in the air. The place looked like a dream. But for Maya, it was the beginning of a nightmare. She walked slowly into the grand wedding hall. Her dress was simple but elegant. Her heart was full of hope. Yet her eyes could already see the judgment in the faces around her. The whispers began the moment she entered, and the cruel smiles followed quickly. The groom's family stood tall near the stage, wearing clothes that glittered with wealth. Their jewelry sparkled. Their voices were loud, and their laughter was sharp. They looked at Maya as if she were a stranger who did not belong. Their eyes moved from her dress to her shoes, and every glance was like a knife cutting her dignity. One aunt leaned close to another and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Is this really the bride? She looks like she bought that dress from a small shop on the street." The laughter that followed was cruel and heavy. Guests who came to celebrate turned their heads. Some tried to hide their amusement. Others joined in with quiet chuckles. Maya felt the weight of every stare, but she kept walking with her head high. She had dreamed of this day. She had hoped for love, yet all she found was humiliation. The family did not stop. Another voice came from the crowd. A cousin of the groom shouted, "How can our family with a fortune of 1.5 billion marry someone like her? She is nothing. She is poor. She has no name. No background." Maya's hands shook, but she held her bouquet tightly. Her eyes moved to the groom, the man she thought loved her. He stood there in silence, his face blank. He did not step forward to protect her. He did not open his mouth to stop the insults. His silence was louder than the cruel words of his family. It told Maya everything she needed to know. It told her that he chose them over her. It told her that she was standing alone. The hall grew colder, though the lights were warm. Every guest could feel the tension, yet the groom's family enjoyed their cruelty. They smiled at each other as if this was a game. They spoke of their fortune, their businesses, their power, and they used all of it to push Maya down. She stood still, listening, her heart beating fast, her mind racing. The pain was sharp. But inside that pain, something else began to grow, a fire that no one could see yet. The groom's father raised his glass for a toast. His voice was strong and proud. He said, "Today we welcome a bride, though she comes from nothing, though she brings no wealth, though she has no name, still we let her into our family. We are generous, we are kind. And perhaps one day she will learn her place." The hall erupted in laughter again. It was no celebration. It was humiliation dressed as honor. Maya's cheeks burned, her heart cried, but her eyes stayed calm. No tear left her face. Maya looked at the crowd. She saw the greedy smiles, the mocking lips, the careless hearts. She realized in that moment that respect was more precious than diamonds, more valuable than gold, more powerful than money. And she knew she could no longer stay silent. She remembered words spoken to her long ago, words from a man who trusted her, a man who told her that if the day ever came when she was treated unfairly, she could call him, and he would protect her. His promise echoed in her mind like thunder. The music continued, but in Maya's ears it faded into nothing. The hall was filled with laughter, but to her it sounded like a cruel drum pounding and pounding. She slowly stepped away from the stage, each step quiet yet strong. Her family was not there to defend her. Her friends were not near to comfort her. But she did not need them, because deep inside she knew the power she carried. A power no one in that hall could imagine. A power that would soon turn their laughter into silence. She reached the edge of the hall. The golden doors were tall and heavy. But when she pushed them, they opened easily, as if even the doors respected her pain outside. The night was calm. The stars above were shining bright. The air was cool. And for the first time that night, she could breathe. She pulled her phone from her bag. Her fingers trembled not from fear, but from the strength building inside her. She scrolled to a number saved under a single name, a name that held the weight of empires. Her thumb hovered over the call button, her heart raced, and her mind asked a final question. Should she do it? Should she press it? Should she end everything with one choice behind her? The sound of laughter still floated through the doors, sharp, cruel, arrogant, and that sound gave her the answer. She pressed the button. She held the phone to her ear, and when the voice answered, she whispered with steady words, "It is time," and the phone was pressed against Maya's ear. Her voice had been soft, but her words were sharp like a blade. She whispered only 3 short ones, "It is time, end it." And then she lowered the phone. Her heart was beating like a drum inside her chest. Her body still carried the sting of humiliation, yet her spirit was no longer weak. Something stronger had awakened inside her, something no one in that golden hall could ever predict. Behind her, laughter still rolled through the doors. The Groom's family thought they had won. They thought they had broken her with their cruel words and their arrogant pride. But they did not know the truth. They did not know the life Maya had lived before this day. They only saw a simple girl with no wealth, no powerful relatives, no rich background. But what they could not see was the hidden fire that had been built through years of struggle and pain. Maya had grown up in a small home where walls cracked and rainwater leaked. She had worn hand-me-down clothes and studied under a broken lamp. People had told her she would never rise. They laughed when she dreamed. They told her to accept her place. But Maya never stopped fighting. She studied harder. She worked longer hours. She knocked on doors until they opened. And with every step she grew stronger. She learned that silence can be louder than noise. She learned that dignity can be more powerful than wealth. During her journey she had met many people, but one stood apart from the rest. A man with power that stretched across oceans. A man whose single decision could make or break empires. His name was never spoken in public, his face rarely seen. Yet his influence was everywhere. He had trusted Maya. He had seen in her the same fire he once carried. He had told her long ago, if ever you face injustice, if ever someone dares to take your dignity away, call me. And I will make sure the world knows who you are. That promise now echoed in her memory. And when she pressed the call button, she knew it was not weakness. It was strength, the strength to protect her heart, the strength to remind the world that cruelty carries a price. She stood beneath the night sky. The stars above seemed brighter, the air around her sharper. She could almost feel the shift of destiny itself. Inside the hall, the family continued to show off their empire. Their business worth 1.5 billion. Their companies, their factories, their wealth built over generations. They believed money made them untouchable. They believed no one could challenge them. Not a girl like Maya, not anyone. But as they raised their glasses and smiled their arrogant smiles, a shadow of change was already moving toward them, and the first cracks in their empire were about to appear. Maya returned to the hall, her steps calm, her eyes steady. The guests turned to look at her again, expecting to see defeat, expecting to see tears. But instead they saw something they could not explain. Her face was calm. Her lips carried no smile. Yet her presence felt heavier, stronger, almost as if she had grown taller. The whispers began again. But this time they were not filled with laughter. They were filled with questions. Who is she really? Why does she look so calm after all the insults? Well, what did she do when she stepped outside? The groom's mother looked at Maya with a smirk, still certain of her power. She whispered to another woman, "She is only a poor girl. She cannot harm us. Look at her dress. Look at her family." But deep inside, a tiny flicker of unease began to stir, because Maya's silence was no longer the silence of weakness. It was the silence before a storm. Maya stood near the stage. Her eyes moved slowly from one face to another. She saw the greed in their smiles, the arrogance in their posture, the cruelty in their laughter, and she thought of how quickly those smiles would fade. She thought of how soon those proud voices would tremble. She thought of the moment when the empire they loved more than anything would collapse like a castle made of sand. Her fingers still held the phone at her side. The call had been short, yet powerful. Her ally had already moved. The strings of power were already being pulled. Banks would question transactions. Partners would receive new information, and the government would soon receive reports that could not be ignored. The fortune worth 1.5 billion had already started to shake, though no one in the hall knew it yet. Maya's eyes fell on the groom, the man who once promised love, the man who now stood silent while his family tore her apart. He looked at her with confusion. He could not understand why she seemed so unbroken. He could not explain why her calmness made him afraid. His lips opened, but no words came because deep down he knew he had chosen silence at the wrong moment, and now that silence might cost him everything. The music played on, but the mood of the hall began to change. Though no one knew why, though no news had reached them yet, the air felt heavier, the laughter weaker, even the lights above seemed dimmer. Maya stood in the center of it all, quiet but powerful, waiting for the storm to arrive. And when it came, it would not be gentle, it would not be small. It would be the kind of storm that tears down walls and leaves only silence behind. The golden hall was still alive with music and chatter. The groom's family smiled proudly, lifting their glasses high. They thought nothing had changed. They thought the night belonged to them. But in the corners of the room, small ripples of unease began to grow. A few phones buzzed. A few faces turned pale. Whispers rose quietly like smoke from a hidden fire. One uncle answered a call. His hand trembled slightly as he held the phone. His smile faded as he listened. He tried to hide his fear, but his eyes gave him away. Another cousin checked her screen and gasped. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Something is wrong. The banks are freezing accounts. What is happening?" The laughter around the hall grew thinner. The music now sounded hollow, and for the first time that night the proud family felt something they never expected: uncertainty. Maya stood at the edge of the stage, her presence calm, her face unreadable. Yet her silence felt heavier with every passing second. She did not need to speak. She did not need to raise her voice, because the storm she had called had already arrived, unseen but powerful, moving faster than anyone could stop. She looked at the crowd and saw the fear spreading slowly from one guest to another, like a wave that cannot be held back. The groom noticed the change too. He looked at his parents, his uncles, his cousins, and he saw panic building, their proud faces twisted with confusion. He turned back to Maya, his heart pounded. He wanted to ask her what she had done, but his lips refused to move because deep inside he already knew. He remembered the way she had stepped outside, the way she returned with calm fire in her eyes, and he understood too late that her silence was never weakness. It was power waiting for the right moment. Another phone rang. This time the groom's father answered. His voice that had once been strong now trembled. "What do you mean the investors are pulling out? What do you mean our accounts are frozen? His words grew sharper, his face red, but nothing changed. The news kept coming. His empire was shaking. The billion-dollar fortune he had built and guarded was slipping through his fingers like sand in the wind, and he could not stop it. The guests began to whisper louder. Some pulled out their phones and searched for news. Their eyes widened as headlines flashed. Billionaire family under investigation. Shares falling, companies losing partners. The room that had once been filled with cruel laughter was now filled with gasps and questions. Everyone turned to look at Maya, the girl they had mocked, the bride they had humiliated, the woman they had called nothing, and they wondered who she truly was. Maya's eyes stayed calm, her hands steady. She did not smile. She did not gloat. But inside her heart she felt the fire of dignity. She knew this was not revenge. This was justice. The kind that comes when arrogance blinds the powerful and cruelty crosses the line. She remembered every word they had thrown at her, every laugh that had cut her soul, and she knew they had written their own downfall the moment they chose to humiliate her instead of respect her. The groom's mother clutched her pearls. Her voice shook as she asked, "Who is she? How can she do this?" But no one answered, no one dared to move, because every person in the hall was watching Maya now, their eyes wide with fear and curiosity. She was no longer the simple bride they thought she was. She was a storm hidden in plain sight, a storm they had awakened with their cruelty. The groom finally stepped forward, his voice small, his words weak. "Maya, please, what did you do? Tell me this is not real." But Maya only looked at him, her silence sharper than any words. She thought of the love he had promised, the silence he had chosen when she needed him most. And she let her calm gaze answer him. His face crumbled as he realized he had lost her. Not just her love, but her respect, and without that he had nothing. The groom's father shouted orders, "Call the banks, stop the media, fix this now." But his voice carried no power anymore. No one could save him, not tonight. The empire was falling piece by piece, faster than he could breathe, and every person in the room knew it. They looked at Maya and then at him, and the truth was clear. The family that had humiliated her was now being humiliated before the entire world. The chandeliers still sparkled above. The music still played, but the mood was broken. The hall no longer felt golden. It felt heavy. Every guest knew they were witnessing something greater than a wedding. They were watching the fall of a dynasty, the end of an empire. And at the center of it all stood Maya, calm, quiet, unshaken, her eyes glowing with the strength of someone who knew her worth, someone who had turned pain into power. The night that began with laughter had turned into silence, and within that silence every person felt the weight of Maya's unseen power. They did not know her secrets. They did not know her connections, but they knew one thing clearly: this bride was no victim. She was the storm that ended a billion-dollar fortune with nothing more than a single call. The hall was silent now. The laughter that once filled the air was gone, replaced by whispers of fear and confusion. The guests shifted in their seats, their eyes moving back and forth between the crumbling groom's family and the calm bride standing before them. The chandeliers still shone above, but the light felt cold. The golden glow of the hall could not hide the darkness of shame spreading through the room. Maya stood tall, her hands still steady, her face calm. She had been humiliated in front of everyone. Yet now she was the only one with dignity left. The family that once mocked her looked small, broken, desperate. She could see the panic in their eyes, the trembling in their hands. And in that moment she understood that the power of respect is far greater than the power of wealth. Her silence had carried weight. But now it was time to speak. It was time for the truth to be revealed. The groom's father shouted again, trying to regain control. He barked orders at his sons, at his nephews, but no one listened. Their phones kept ringing. Messages kept arriving, and every word brought more ruin. His empire was collapsing faster than he could stand, and he knew he could not stop it. He turned toward Maya, his voice filled with rage. "What have you done? Who do you think you are?" But Maya only looked at him, her eyes cold like steel. Her silence cut deeper than his shouting. Finally, she stepped forward, her voice soft but strong. Every guest leaned closer to hear. She said, "I am the girl you called nothing, the bride you called poor, the woman you mocked. But what you never saw is that respect is not given by money. It is earned by kindness. It is given by love, and tonight you showed the world that you have neither." The words echoed through the hall, sharp and heavy, and no one dared to interrupt. The groom's mother clutched her pearls tighter, her lips trembling as she whispered, "How could she do this? Who is she?" Maya turned to her and said, "I am someone who worked hard for every step. I am someone who knows the value of pain. And I am someone who was given a promise by a man far more powerful than all of you. A man who saw me not as poor, not as weak, but as strong. He told me that if anyone ever took my dignity, I should call, and he would answer. Tonight I made that call. And now your empire pays the price." Gasps filled the room. The guests leaned closer, their eyes wide. They had never seen such calm power, such quiet strength. They realized that Maya was not just a simple bride. She was the reason the mighty family before them was falling apart. The same family that once stood untouchable was now broken, their billion-dollar fortune vanishing like smoke. All because of one phone call, all because they underestimated the woman standing before them. The groom stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Maya, please, I am sorry. I should have stopped them. I should have spoken. But I was afraid. I love you. I never wanted this." He reached for her hand, but Maya pulled it away. Her eyes filled not with tears, but with fire. She said, "You chose silence when your family tore me apart. You said nothing when they called me poor. You looked away. Love without courage is no love at all. And now you must live with the silence you chose." The groom's face crumbled. His shoulders dropped. He fell to his knees in front of her, begging, but Maya did not move. Her calm gaze pierced through him. The guests watched in awe. Whispers filled the air. They could not believe what they were seeing. The bride they once pitied was now the one with power. The groom who once stood proud was now on the floor, broken and ashamed. The groom's father tried again, his voice weak now. "You cannot destroy us. You cannot end a fortune built for generations." But even as he spoke, another message arrived. His company had lost another investor, another partner had pulled away. The walls of his empire were falling faster. And he knew the truth. Maya had already destroyed him. The girl he mocked had ended everything. Maya looked around the hall, her eyes meeting the faces of the guests. She said, "Let this night be remembered not for wealth, but for truth. You all laughed when I walked in. You all joined in when they mocked me. But now you see, money cannot protect cruelty. Wealth cannot buy respect. Only dignity lasts. Only kindness matters." Her words struck deep, and many guests lowered their heads in shame. She stepped back slowly, her voice steady. "Tonight you learn that power is not in gold, not in diamonds, not in billion-dollar fortunes. Power is in respect. And when you take that from someone, you risk losing everything." The silence that followed was heavy. Not a single person dared to laugh. Not a single guest dared to smile. They all knew they had witnessed something greater than wealth. They had seen the truth revealed. Maya turned and began to walk toward the golden doors once again, her dress flowing behind her, her steps calm and steady. The hall stayed quiet, every eye on her. The family that once humiliated her now sat in ruins, their empire crumbling, their pride shattered. And all of it because they forgot the simple truth that respect is more valuable than money. She pushed the doors open, the cool night air rushed in, and she walked out with dignity, leaving behind silence, fear, and the ruins of a fortune. The golden doors closed behind Maya, leaving the broken family inside. Outside, the night air wrapped around her like a shield, cool and steady. The stars above seemed brighter, as if the universe itself was watching her steps. She walked slowly down the marble path, her head held high, her heart heavy but strong. She was no longer the bride humiliated. She was the woman who had ended an empire with one call. Inside the hall, chaos spread like fire. Phones kept ringing, voices rose in panic. The groom's father clutched his chest as messages poured in. His billion-dollar fortune was gone, partners pulled away. Banks closed doors, investors fled. The same guests who once laughed at Maya now whispered about their downfall. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others gasped in shock. All of them knew they were witnessing history, the collapse of a dynasty, the price of arrogance. The groom remained on his knees, tears in his eyes, his heart crushed. He had lost the woman he claimed to love. He had lost his family's pride. He had lost the empire he thought would never fall. His silence on that stage had cost him everything. He tried to stand, tried to follow Maya, but his legs were weak, and his soul was weaker. He realized that no amount of wealth could rebuild the respect he had thrown away. Outside the hall, reporters gathered quickly. News spread faster than fire in dry grass. Cameras flashed. Microphones stretched forward. Voices shouted questions. Is it true the fortune is gone? Who is the bride? How did this happen? Maya walked past them calmly. She did not rush. She did not hide. Her silence spoke louder than words. Every step she took told the world that she was no victim. She was power wrapped in grace, dignity in motion. The guests who left the hall later spoke in hushed tones. Some said they would never forget the sight of Maya standing calm while the family broke. Others said they had learned a lesson that night. Never underestimate someone just because they appear simple. Never mock someone who carries quiet strength. One guest whispered to another, respect is the real treasure, not money, not power, because without respect, everything else can vanish in a moment. And that was exactly what they had seen. The groom's mother sat in her chair, her hands still clutching her pearls. She could not believe it, the empire she had boasted about, the wealth she had shown off. The pride she carried in every word, all gone in one night, destroyed by the girl she had called nothing. Her whispers grew weaker, her voice cracked. She asked again and again, who was she? How did she have this power? But no answer came, only silence and the sound of doors closing on their golden hall. Maya walked further down the path, her phone still in her hand. She thought of the man who had kept his promise, the one who answered her call, the one who moved mountains to protect her dignity. She did not call him again. She did not need to. His actions had spoken louder than any words. And she carried gratitude in her heart, not because he saved her, but because he reminded her that she was worthy of respect, worthy of love, worthy of standing tall against cruelty. She reached the car waiting outside. The driver opened the door. But before stepping in, Maya turned one last time to look at the hall glowing in the distance. She remembered the laughter, the cruel words, the toasts made to mock her. And then she remembered the silence that followed when the empire began to crumble. She took a deep breath, her eyes calm, her lips firm. She knew she had closed a chapter of her life, not with tears, but with strength. The news traveled across the city, across the country, across the world. Headlines screamed of the fall. The family once untouchable had been brought down in a single night. The bride, humiliated at her own wedding, had turned into the storm that ended everything. People everywhere spoke of her. Some called her a hero. Some called her a mystery. But all agreed on one truth: dignity had won over wealth. The groom tried to reach her in the days that followed. Messages were sent, calls unanswered. He begged for forgiveness. But Maya never returned. She did not hate him. She simply moved on, because forgiveness does not always mean return, and love without respect is only an empty promise. She carried no anger, only peace. And in that peace she found freedom. Maya's story became a lesson whispered in homes, in offices, in schools. People said never mock someone for what they lack, because you do not know what strength they carry. Never measure a person by wealth, because wealth can vanish in a moment, but dignity never fades. She had shown the world that the quiet ones often hold the loudest power, and the smallest voice can change everything. As her car drove away under the shining stars, Maya leaned back and closed her eyes. Her journey had been painful, but it had given her something more precious than gold: the power to stand tall, the courage to walk away, the strength to show the world that respect is priceless. And with that thought she smiled gently, a smile not of victory but of peace, knowing she had walked out of the hall not broken but whole, not poor but rich in the only way that mattered.